Okay, today we're going to talk about the selection tool, how to better utilize it by using masks. We're also going to talk about uh, layer options where you can add effects or change the blending modes, things like that. So we're going to start with a picture of Wolverine. Uh, as you can tell, this was taken in my classroom. It is an actual statue, so even though it looks realistic, he's not really here. First thing we're going to do is a simple selection around the outside, getting close but not overlapping. And this will help set some nice little boundaries that we have. We're going to move over here in the layers panel. And if you've noticed, I've already double clicked. I've already named my layer so it doesn't say background. That's so we can get that nice checkered pattern, a transparent effect. Down at the bottom, the third one from the left is called Add Layer Mask. We're going to click on it, and if you look, it now has an outline, and you can tell that we have now cut out part of the image. Notice the little 4 bracketing lines on the layer mask. If I click on here, that means that this layer is selected. If I click over here, the layer mask is. Layer mask only work in black and white. If I'm in the layer and I change the color to red, you'll notice that my foreground color is now red. And I click on the layer mask, you notice it now changes to black and white. So that is the only black and white options, or that is the only way you work in layer mask is in black and white. Black erases, white adds to. So what I'm going to do is make a selection, get in close, not that close, get in close, and I'm going to make a selection. And as long as my background is set to black, it will erase when I hit the delete key. If I switch it and my background is set to white, it will actually add it back in. Now, the cool thing about this is, I can make a selection, getting real close to this facial hair and come around and delete. And, got to make sure it's set to black. Delete, and I cut off his ear. Well, luckily, Wolverine has a healing factor. The nice thing about using the layer masks is that I can now brush back in a mistake. And I can use the left bracket to make my brush size smaller, the right bracket to make it bigger. Remember before I said white adds, black subtracts. So because it's a layer mask, the image is still there, it's just masked out. So I can actually paint his ear back on. And if I switch this to black being the foreground, I can actually use the paintbrush to trim it out. Okay, so I've got multiple options here. Now I'm going to go ahead and switch or do a selection. I've got a nice selection here already masked out so that we can move on. And we'll go ahead and add the mask to it so I have a nice background. Okay, let me zoom back out and we can see that he is completely removed. So now I'm going to go ahead and, it's red. I better change it to black and white. I want to add to it. I want to add the background back in. So I'm going to get my brush. I'm going to go big. And, what's happening? Well, that's not right. What's happened is I have the layer selected. I don't have the mask selected. With the mask selected, it's on black. Switch it back to white. With the mask selected, I can add it back in. Okay, so as you can look over here, I'm painting the mask back out. See the black, and now the mask painted out. Okay, so that is how you paint a mask. I'm going to go over here, and I've got an image here that I've been working on. He now has a nice background in it, but he doesn't really match the background. And to do that, we're going to do what's called some effects. Now, down in the right, the second one over is the FX button. It has multiple effects here, and we'll go through each one at a time. We'll talk about all of them. The ones that we're going to use today are gradient, we're going to use a drop shadow, and we're going to use the color overlay. And I'll show you how these work. We'll open the color overlay, and the way it's originally set is set to blend mode normal. The opacity is 100%. I'm going to click on my color, and I'm going to select one of the colors in the background. And you notice it just wipes him completely out. I'm going to change my blend mode to multiply, and I'm going to drop the opacity down. And what this does is this gives me the coloration of the background image, because before he's completely bright, doesn't look like he belongs. Now it's starting to look like he belongs there. It looks like the lighting is just right. Well, there's more that you can do to it. We're going to click on gradient overlay. Now again, the first time you do it, it's going to look like this. Okay, so I switch it to multiply, and I drop it down just a little bit. And now if you look, it kind of blends in, so it looks like he belongs there. He's getting a little light. Throw in a drop shadow just to have a little definition behind him. Typically you wouldn't do this because there's no drop shadow against the sky. But we're doing it to make the image pop and to show you how it works. Bevel and emboss I don't use. It's overdone, but if you look, it just basically puts a big old bevel and emboss on his face on the whole thing here. Oh wait, sorry, there we go. Bevel and emboss, depth, you got your size. You can soften it up if you want. I mean, you could create some cool effects. Bevel and emboss is overused. I tend not to use it anymore. Stroke, will add a stroke around him. So see, he's got a nice little stroke. Control the size, control the color of the stroke, position, everything. Inner shadow, will put a shadow on the inside. So let's look again. Look at his face, without, with. So it kind of gives some nice lighting features. You can control the angle, the distance, all of that here, the blend mode. Normally this is set to multiply. Inner glow does the same thing as inner shadow, but it's a glow effect. So you can make it a big glow, have him nice and pretty. Satin adds a little satin overlay. I usually don't mess with this one. I don't like the way it looks. Pattern overlay, if you wanted to add a pattern to him, you can always get more patterns under the gear. They're all right here. Outer glow brings the glow outside. Again, by turning down the spread, you can soften the glow, so now he's like a little angel glowing. And that is the layer effects. And you can see they're right here. And you can turn them off and on by using little eyeballs. So you can kind of see, hey, this looks good, this looks good. Don't really like the gradient. Don't like the drop shadow, so I'm going to take it off. And you can play with them here. The other thing I want to talk about is the layer blending modes. Now, let's move over to a poster. As you can see, the student here is actually faded out. And to do this effect, I actually have two photos. One with her in it and one without her sitting there. And the one with her in it, as you can see, is masked. And I've set the opacity to 50%. If I change it to 100, she shows up completely. 50% gives me that faded out look. Now let's take this back to 100 and we're going to go over the blending modes. Here's the layer blending modes. So normal, and some of these won't always work. It depends on what you're working with. Sometimes you will not get anything. Sometimes it'll be like, wow, that's awesome. So here's dissolve. As you can tell, not much has happened. A little fraying around the edges. Darken. Multiply. Color burn. We'll go down. We'll do a screen. Drop on down, a little overlay. These are great to play with to get really cool effects. For this particular poster, I just wanted to drop the opacity down. But you can get some really nice effects by playing with the layer blending mode. And that is it for this lesson. Thank you so much.